Welcome to Serious About Rugby League. On the agenda today we're going to be discussing Hull FC and in particular Lee Radford. Now, Radders has had probably a successful stint as coach at Hull FC since taking charge in 2014. They've won back-to-back Challenge Cups in 2016 and 2017. But in the league they've been very inconsistent, particularly this season. You look at some of the results, they've had impressive wins, particularly on Good Friday against their local rivals Hull KR, and at Warrington even more recently. But I think since the back end of last season and the start of this one, there have been some, I think we can call them bizarre results where they've just really not turned up. Now, if we look at the end of last year, they were beaten 72-10 by Wakefield, 80-10 by Warrington, and going into this year they were beaten 63-12 by Warrington, 62-16 by St Helens, and on Saturday at Magic Weekend they were beaten 55-2 by Huddersfield. Now, Jack, I'll come to you because some Hull fans are actually beginning to turn on Radford. Do you think that's fair, and is his job really at risk?
Well, initially you sort of look at, because I think a lot of this has come off the back of the weekend's result. Obviously, like I said, 55-2 against Huddersfield. A side that, you know, that will give them a good game, but they probably should be beaten, if we're being realistic. And, you know, so since it's on the back of that, a lot of people could consider it a knee-jerk reaction. But you do look back at the results and, you know, they went on that run of 13 defeats at the back end of last season. You know, you've just listed off a fair few heavy defeats they've suffered, you know, 60 points, 70, 80 even points, you know, against the likes of Warrington, Wakey, etc. And you think about, you know, how is he still in a job after that? A lot of, you know, you look at Leeds, for example, at the start of this season. I know it's a completely different situation, but Dave Furner had, 14 games in charge? You know, and lost 10 of them. You know, Radford lost 13 in a row and managed to keep his job. So is it really a knee-jerk reaction, or is there actually a problem there? Because you look at the long-term future, and Hull FC are, you know, a team with big ambitions. You know, since, you know, well, for the past few years, they've always had that ambition to win Super League, to be up there competing. You can tell that with the transfers they made. Gareth Ellis, for example, when they brought him in, that was a massive statement of intent. And they've never sort of reached those heights. But they've kept Radford on despite not, you know, yes, they've won the Challenge Cup, but for me, coaches get judged on title wins and league wins. You know, not, you know, you can win the Challenge Cup by winning 5 games. You know, yeah. It's not a full season. So it's a strange one, really, because, you know, I think this has split Hull fans down the middle as well. You've got some saying get him out and some saying no, stick with him. But if we're being realistic, I don't think that he is capable of leading them to a Super League title, which is what, you know, their end game sort of is. That's what they want.
Yeah. Well, what do you take on this, Richard? Because, as Jack mentioned, we've seen at Leeds, they've got rid of David Furner. They initially got rid of Brian McDermott. I don't actually think things have improved at Leeds. Now, if Hull got rid of Radford, do you think things would improve?
Well, I know we're going to talk about Leeds later on, but is it not all down to the Leeds predicament? Is it Radford, or is it Hull FC?
Yeah.
Is it something that he's done last week, last month, last 6 months, or is it something inherent in the entire club? Look at that list of players that we've got. They are all big name Hull players over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, out of contract, going, end of the career. Have they failed to recruit? Is that Radford's fault? I think if I was a Hull fan, I'd think he's the man for the job. He's one of our own almost.
Yeah.
But has he got the backing? Has he got, and I'm looking at a lot of rugby league clubs here, have they got that technical support? They brought Sinfield in at Leeds, director of rugby. Can you expect one lad to do it all on his own? And is Hull FC, is the establishment of that club letting him down? Because all of a sudden they've come bang to a dead end. And you look at it, they're nearly going to have to start again next season.
Yeah.
Unless they re-sign some of these players that's out of contract, but they're not going to rejuvenate them. You're not going to rejuvenate Gareth Ellis, are you?
Yeah.
So is he the right man for the job? He might be, but I think he needs a big help. They're in a transition period, LFC at the minute, a real big transition period, as you said, and I don't think one guy can do it on his own. So do they need to do something else, like put a director of rugby in?
Well, yeah, that's potentially the case. Now, you've mentioned there the players that are off contract. Now, Radford, I think, is the man who's doing the recruitment at the club with Adam Pearson, and they've brought in Josh Jones already. They're currently looking at the NRL to bring in players there. But do they, like Richard said, do they actually need this massive overhaul?
You see, I think they do, because I think at the end of the day, one of the key things about winning the league is squad depth, and having a lot of squad depth, but having the quality players in there. You look at your Warringtons and your Saints. There's not much deadwood in terms of players. I think probably you could look at Saints having Luke Douglas and Kyle Amor as their sort of deadwood players, but still, those are two decent players still, two decent standard players. But they've then focused their attention on bringing through the youth. They've got like to Matty Lees, Jack Ashworth, James Bentley, Aaron Smith, who've all done a job this year. And then likewise then at Warrington, they had a big recruitment in pre-season. I think was a bit overlooked by a lot of people. They brought in Lama Tarsi, they got Danny Walker from Widnes, who again, there was no real weak recruitment. Matt Davis is another one as well from London, who's really stepped up this year. And they didn't really lose anyone either. So they've literally just bolstered their squad. They've not really brought in players to replace others, but just rather added them. Then you look at Hull, and you look at some of the players on their sort of extended squad. You've got Chris Green, Brad Fash, Jordan Thompson. I thought was a bizarre signing, because for me, I no disrespect to him, but I don't think he's a Super League winner. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think they've got too many of those players in there that aren't Super League winners, and that might be alright as the odd squad player, but sort of for the lower teams. If you're a team striving to win Super League, you need to get rid of that deadwood and instead try and promote some good quality players that are solid in Super League and can win you the league, as part of a bigger squad. And I just don't think Hull have got that. I think there's way too many players that they've got a really big squad with too much of it taken up by, as I said, deadwood.
Yeah. Well, if we go back to this season and recruitment aside, if you look at these results where they're not turning up either, they're getting blown away. But they've won 2 Challenge Cups, and Radford's proved that in one-off games, in big games, he can motivate his team. Now, recently away to Warrington, he pointed to the Wolves social media account disrespecting him. He used that as a motivation factor for his team, and they went to the Halliwell Jones and won against all the odds just a few weeks after themselves getting blown out of the park by Warrington. Now, are they going to be able to bring somebody in who's more likely to win a major trophy with the squad he's got? Because as you said, the squad isn't particularly full of players you look at and think, yeah, Super League winner, this is a Super League winning squad. So in fact, if he can get them into the top 5, which they currently are, keep them in the Challenge Cup, which they currently are, isn't he the right man for the job because he can motivate them in the big games?
If he does that, he's got a result, hasn't he? Yeah. I don't think, even if I was a Hull FC fan, I could expect any more. With the squad, with the old players, good players,
yeah.
But they've run the race, and is that something that's you look at your Minicellos and he's been out with injuries and all sorts, but he was a key player for them, and can they still expect him to do it week in week out? No, is that the reason? I mean, I don't know if you saw Radford interviewed it after Magic Weekend, and he was just almost bemused.
Yeah.
Just look, I tell them what to do. They know what's expected. He says, and they go over that touchline. He says, what can I do? And he was just like a man in desperation. And what can he do? I don't know. It's a bit like sending a 25-year-old horse out in Derby.
Yeah.
It ain't, it might have been best horse in the world once upon a time, but it ain't going to do it.
Yeah.
It might just put a spurt on, might it? If you look at, but it's just not going to do it. And I think that's what he's doing. And I think you could change Radford, and you will not change what's wrong with Hull FC.
Yeah.
I think that's again point. I think it all comes back to the players again though. You look at Hull FC as being probably one of, if not Super League's most inconsistent team. Like you said, they can come up good in the one-off games, but if it's not their day, then like we saw at the weekend against Huddersfield, they are dreadful. Literally, you were watching that game and Huddersfield would, yes, Huddersfield were good. I'm not taking anything away from them, but they would just find it so easy to break Hull down. And again, you do look at that squad, and you've got to think about the players themselves. They're inconsistent. You look at Mark Sneed, for example. You know, on his day, he can kick you to absolute death. Jake Connor on his day is an absolute maverick of a player. I think he's probably one of, if not the best English player still playing in Super League. You know, the skill set he's got and the natural talent is ridiculous. Joe Westerman's another one. You know, he 1 week can be a bit of a world beater. I mean, I forget who it was against now, but I think it was Wigan actually scored that ridiculous big show and go under the post where he, you know, literally just hoodwinked 4 or 5 Wigan players and went under the post. And you know, then the next week he, you know, is like a turnstile when it comes to tackling. You know, you've got so many inconsistent players there, and big personalities as well. Jake Connor again, and Albert Kelly's another one. You know, those you've got to manage big personalities like that within a squad and make them play together. And you know, it seems like that might be one of the problems Radford's got at the minute, is that his squad is full of inconsistent players who maybe I'd want to have an attitude problem, but a lot of their game is down to their attitude on the day. And when you've not got players in there that are just, you know, sort of calm heads, that are consistent, you know, Danny Houghton's maybe the only one. You know, that's when the problems start to arise, and I think that's what one of the main issues is.
Yeah. So in one word, do you keep Radford?
No.
I would.
Yeah.
I'd look at the bigger picture at other things. I don't see what getting someone else in, certainly at this stage of the season, could do. And maybe at the end of the season, who do they get?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly interesting, guys. Hull FC fans in particular, would you keep Radford? Which players would you like to come in for next season? And do you think Radford is the man to lead Hull to Challenge Cup glory and possibly Super League glory? Let us know in the comments.